Hey friends, this is Brian from Naples Integrated Recovery, and today I'm going to look at something that shows up in every human's life: pressure. Not the dramatic kind, not saving somebody from a burning building, but small, constant social pressure that we feel every day. Pressure to feel agreeable, pressure to keep the peace, pressure to avoid conflict, or avoid awkwardness, or avoid disappointing somebody that you care about. 2,000 years ago, Plutarch was a Greek writer and he wrote an entire piece about that exact issue. The crazy part that I love about Stoicism is how 2,000-year-old writing is still every bit applicable as today. And obviously back then there weren't Twitter arguments or boundary setting issues with family, but the principles still line up almost perfectly with what we deal with in the here and now. Plutarch talks about a specific human tendency, being overly sensitive to shame, embarrassment, and disapproval. And you know exactly what this looks like. This is like when you're apologizing too much, saying, sure, no problem, even though your whole body is internally saying, absolutely fucking not. Letting things go when you know that you shouldn't, avoiding normal conflict because it feels emotionally dangerous, or treating somebody's disappointed face like it's a crisis. Plutarch's point was this: most people don't cave because they're confused about what's right. They cave because they can't tolerate emotional discomfort of doing what's right. Modern psychology would describe this as conflict avoidance, people pleasing, shame sensitivity, fear of social friction, and fear of being perceived as rude. Well, that's not morality, it's anxiety, and it's deeply human. Plutarch sets up a spectrum that still makes sense today. On one end, the completely shameless person. This is somebody who never feels embarrassed, never reflects, and steamrolls through any social situation. On the other end, an overly sensitive person, someone who feels embarrassed by everything, second guesses everything they do, and collapses the first second that they even detect disapproval. What we should be aiming for is somewhere in the middle, a place where you feel a healthy amount of shame or embarrassment, the kind that says, okay, I know I'm better than this, but not distorted shame, the kind that says, if I upset somebody, I'm a bad person. The middle ground is what intelligent adults build towards. This would include a steady sense of self, respect for other people, boundaries that aren't hostile, and integrity without being rigid. You're not shutting down your emotions, you're just putting them into proportion. Going back 2,000 years, let's pull this out of ancient Greece and make it marketable for today. Example 1, the one more day mistake. Creon, a ruler in Greek mythology, was supposed to exile Medea. He knew that it was the right call, but she asked for just one more day, and he gave in. Manipulated by her emotional appeal, she ends up playing out her revenge plot. In his attempt to appear merciful, devastating consequences ensue, leading to his death as well as those of his children. Modern version, this is not ending a relationship because you don't want the uncomfortable conversation, or giving your time to somebody who's already draining you, or saying yes when your instinct is very clearly a no. I see this frequently when somebody is unhappy in a relationship and they are looking for the quote unquote right time to end it, but it looks a little bit something like this. Well, it's Thanksgiving. Well, Christmas is coming up and I know that my partner just really loves Christmas. Well, I don't want to do it around New Year's because I don't want them to start off the year on a bad foot. Well, I hate to do it right before Valentine's Day because I would hate for them to just live a sad life thinking about this every Valentine's Day. well, their birthday's in March, and I really hate for them to have a bad birthday memory every year going forward. Stop. This is always the pattern. Short-term relief, which is avoidance, and instead, long-term mess, prolonging suffering. Example 2. Trying to avoid looking rude. Plutarch tells the story of Dion, someone who literally got killed because he didn't want to seem paranoid by taking basic precautions. Now, we do a mild version of this constantly. This is going along with plans that you absolutely hate or ignoring red flags because you don't want to seem like you're the one that's being dramatic. For me, this can even include staying at a party longer than I want to just because I don't want to make things feel weird, or not correcting somebody because I don't want them to feel embarrassed even though they're using the wrong word. It's the fear of what someone might think that keeps us stuck. This kind of parallels a horror movie, which I love horror movies. 2015, a movie called The Invitation is about a man who attends a dinner party hosted by his ex-wife and her new husband, and the entire night has this creepy sense of emotional intrusion rather than overt danger. It plays on the tension of unresolved grief, social pressure, and how people often second guess their own instincts just to avoid seeming like they're paranoid or rude. Small behaviors and group dynamics shift, and he starts to question whether or not the threat is actually real or if he's losing his grip on reality. I watched this with my partner and thought many times, if I was in this situation, I would absolutely be saying something rather than just going along with it. But so this is a perfect example of the horror that comes from a psychological trap of being surrounded by people who are acting almost normal while something deeply wrong pulses underneath. Ever been in a situation like that where you knew that something was off, but you just still went along with it anyway? Let's talk about why we cave and the psychology behind that. This is where modern science and Plutarch agree. People fold under pressure because embarrassment feels dangerous, disappointing somebody feels like it might be wrong, the shame feels unbearable, conflict feels like rejection, and saying no feels like betrayal. This is just your nervous system reacting to awkwardness as if it's a threat. Your brain is telling you, if I upset this person, I'm creating an unsafe situation. Logic? Nope. Not even present. It's totally ridiculous, right? But biologically, that's just what our default wiring looks like. So you're not caving because you're weak. You're caving because your emotional alarm system is firing way too early. Plutarch makes an important point. He's not telling you not to care about social norms. Social norms do matter. How we treat people matters. Respect for other people matters. What doesn't need to matter is your imagined disappointment, your imagined embarrassment, what strangers might think of you, or somebody else's mood momentarily. You don't have to be abrasive, it doesn't make you selfish, and you don't have to become numb. You just have to be appropriately responsive instead of runaway sensitive. That's the difference between a boundary and a wall. These are the signs that you're giving into pressure. If you're feeling responsible for somebody else's reactions, apologizing just for having needs, agreeing to things before you've even checked in with yourself, avoiding telling someone the truth because you're afraid that you're going to cause a scene, silencing yourself because you're worried that somebody else might be offended. Good Lord, does that happen today? Or saying no worries when internally, yes, there were several worries. That's your body telling you that you are shrinking. This will lead to unquestionable internal resentment, tension, frustration, regret, replaying conversations, that thought to yourself, oh my God, why did I do that again? And that reaction is your internal compass saying you are abandoning yourself to keep somebody else comfortable. Here's the practical tips, what you can do to build resistance and where growth really happens. 1. Start with tiny little boundary reps. Don't practice this one on major life decisions. Just do micro moments, like, no thanks, or actually, I can't do that tonight, or I think I'm going to pass on that. The goal is for you to tolerate discomfort, not to be totally fearless. 2. Stop giving fake praise. If something wasn't good, don't pretend that it was. False praise trains dishonesty and self-betrayal. If you didn't like something, it's okay to say, okay, it's not my cup of tea, but I'm happy that you enjoy that. 3. Learn phrasing that's firm but not aggressive. Here's a couple of examples. That's not going to work for me. Or, yeah, I hear you, but I'm not going to be able to do that. Or, you know what? I'm going to step back from this conversation. Or, no thank you. Short, direct, neutral. If you're trying to use a little bit of a pressure valve, humor can help. You can make boundaries lighter if humor fits your personality. For example, I think I've hit my quota of favors for this week. Or, I'm practicing not overcommitting. That's my therapist's orders. This isn't about minimizing yourself, it's about smoothing the landing. Last, let yourself feel discomfort instead of avoiding it. That's the whole game. Let the discomfort rise and fall without having a reaction to it. Same way that you feel all of your emotions, that's the same way that shame sensitivity can loosen its grip. How about this? 2,000 years before Brian ever earned a master's degree in addiction, Plutarch noticed something interesting about people who have addiction. They push past shame, they push past disapproval, they push past social pressure, and past judgment. Not because they're immoral, but because the goal feels urgent in the addict's brain. And the insight here is psychological. Humans have the ability to resist massive pressure when something feels important enough. So the real question becomes, what do you value enough to hold your boundary? Is that your self-respect, safety, your time? Man, that's a big one for me, working 50-something hours a week. If somebody is even taking 5 minutes of my time, it feels like a major violation. Once you anchor your boundary in your values, pressure loses a lot of its power. Here's how to diagnose whether or not you compromised or caved. If things got worse after your decision, you caved. If your life shrinks, if your resentment rises, or if your self-respect drops, it wasn't compromise, it was you surrendering, and you will always know the difference in your body. When you start resisting pressure, people are going to react. Some people are going to be surprised, some people will test you, some people will try to guilt trip you, some will take it personal. Just remember, tolerate criticism without absorbing it. Some criticism is noise, some criticism is guidance. Most of it is just projection. As you practice, you'll notice that your skin thickens, your center will stabilize, and criticism becomes information, not your identity. That's how adults grow. Here's my final takeaways. Modern rules of thumb. Rule 1. Choose the best action, not the most comfortable one. Comfort is a terrible compass. Rule 2. Practice in low-stakes moments first. Start by small reps, like saying no thanks, or, I didn't care for it. That is what builds confidence. Rule 3. Break only the norm that you need to break. Don't bulldoze every social expectation. Rule 4. Say the truth with tact. Direct doesn't require you to be harsh. Rule 5. Don't give in when you know that you shouldn't. Regret lasts longer than awkwardness. Here's why this work matters. If you don't learn to resist pressure, your life gets shaped by other people, your self-respect erodes, your relationships become one-sided, and your decisions come from fear, not from clarity. You'll start to lose trust in yourself. You don't have to become hard, you don't have to be indifferent. You just have to stop abandoning yourself every time emotional temperature rises. Resisting pressure isn't about becoming tough. It's about becoming congruent with your values, your boundaries, and your actual life. That's not rebellion, that's self-leadership. How do you hold the line without being harsh? This is where emotional intelligence comes in. It's possible to say no without shaming someone. It's also possible to say no without attacking them or lecturing, withdrawing your affection, or creating avoidable conflict. Good boundaries sound like they are clear, steady, kind, and firm, not about controlling the room, about staying aligned with who you are. Plutarch didn't have social media or group chats or workplace politics, but he did understand something about humans that hasn't changed. If you don't direct your life, pressure will direct it for you. So, start small, build your muscle, and stop letting every disappointed face or awkward moment dictate your choices. You get one life. Hold your boundaries and show up as someone who cares, but cares without collapsing. Thanks for listening to my first ever podcast. If you found it helpful, please share it with a friend. Also, give yourself a little bit of grace, remembering that you're practicing something new. You're not going to get it right overnight. And be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Have a great Thanksgiving, and thanks for listening.